demonstration on how to prepare peperonata, and we'll have a couple samples to try as well. So without further ado, Chef Sandra Richardson.
Welcome. Today we're going to be doing a demonstration of peperonata. Does everybody know what it is? Hands, give me a raised hand if you've ever had it. Did you have it in Italy or did you have it here? Here. Well, it's a really great dish to make during this time of year because you really have to have fresh tomatoes and fresh peppers and fresh basil for this particular dish. But what's nice about it is that you can make it and either can it or freeze it for winter months when you don't have these fresh vegetables. But you know, one of the things that the market wants us to do in these chef's demos is to use ingredients, obviously, from the farmers. So this is one that I particularly like because you actually have to have vegetables at this time of year for this particular dish. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here and start showing you how this comes together. And one of the things that I would definitely recommend that you do, if you don't do this at home already, you're going to start with a little bit of garlic and pepperoncino in your olive oil. And put your garlic in when your olive oil is cold. And I know that, you know, hashtag kitchen drama, everybody wants to put the garlic in when the oil's hot and it makes that like great like sizzling sound. But to be honest, your garlic can burn that way. And when you put it in cold, it permeates the oil, it makes it really fragrant, and then you won't burn your garlic. So it's a really good trick when you're making dishes like this. And you'll just let that go for a couple of minutes until your garlic starts to develop into a gold color. And then the rest of the ingredients for this are bell peppers, and you can use any color that you want. I really like using green with the red of the tomatoes. It's a really pretty color combination. But if you want to use red, go ahead and do that. Today I'm going to use a little green and yellow all together. And then you want to also have some onions and again your tomatoes and your basil. And what we're basically going to do is we're going to fry the peppers first in the olive oil, and after the peppers and the onions are fried for a few minutes, then we're going to put in the tomatoes, and then it starts to become a stew. So it's a kind of a different way of doing it, and this is served all over Italy. It's not really, you know, usually Italians are like, this is from my region, and this other region kind of stole it and changed it, but peperonata is done all over Italy, so it's really loved by the Italians. So I don't know if you can, I know you can't see this, but you can probably smell the garlic, right? It's starting to get really a nice smell. So that's when you can throw in your peppers. And you can, now you've got your hashtag kitchen drama, right? Because you've got the sizzling of the peppers. And depending on like how fresh they are and at what time of year, you might need to cook these a little bit more or a little bit less. You know, end of summer peppers are going to take a little bit less time than what we're getting right now because the peppers are so incredibly beautiful. And you know, they're at the time of year when you just put them up to your nose and you can smell them, and it's just like, it's intoxicating. I love that smell of peppers like that when they're really fresh. So you put your peppers in, and then you can also add your onions. You can use white onions, red onions. I picked these because I was over at the patch and I walked by and these onions smelled so fresh and so delicious. I was like, I have to get these. So I got the red ones today. Okay, so while you're gonna let these cook for a little while, you want your peppers and onions to fry a little bit before you put your tomatoes in to start the stew. So, you know, this would be the time, go pour yourself a glass of wine, start to enjoy your cooking experience. I would definitely suggest that you have your tomatoes done beforehand. And there's a couple different ways you can do the tomatoes. So I don't have a sink here today, so I can't show you this, but on my blog, there's a full step-by-step video, and I also have the written instructions. So you can watch the video, and it'll walk you step-by-step how to do the tomatoes. But what you want to do is you want to take your fresh tomato, and you're going to cut a tiny little X at the bottom, and you throw these in boiling water for about 1 minute, or until the skin starts to separate. If they start to separate before 1 minute, pull them out, because the purpose of this is to remove the skin. It's not to cook. You don't want the tomato to cook. So you're really just trying to get this, just to get the skin to come off easily. And once you pull them out of the boiling water, douse it with cold water so it stops any cooking. And then you just pull the skin right off. And then you can core it and you can chop it into small pieces like this. Now, that really does not take very long, so I know it sounds maybe like it's a long process, but don't be intimidated by it. But if you, for some reason, think that sounds too hard, or you don't want to do it, or you don't have any boiling water or whatever, there's two other ways you can do your tomatoes to achieve the same result. You can cut them in half, put them on a sheet pan, and broil them. Broil them for like 5 minutes or so, and then when they come out, you can just pull the skins right off and throw them in your dish. The other thing that you can do, and I did this when I was, one day I was really constrained for time, and I just didn't have the time to do either one of those. So I said, well, I wonder what would happen if I did this. And basically you just cut your tomato, throw it in, and in a few minutes it's going to actually release its skin and you can just pull it off. Now the difference is you kind of have to chop the tomato a little bit when you do it this way with your spoon, but you get the same result. So in terms of how much tomatoes, in the recipes that you have, I suggested for 4 large peppers, do about 2 pounds of tomatoes. That will make it super, super tomatoey, which is just how I like it and how my Italian mom made it when we were growing up. And I like it that way because you can dunk your bread in the tomato juice, and it's really, really good. But if you want the peppers to shine through more, then you can do anywhere with 4 peppers between 1 pound and 2 pounds. So again, depending on your constraint, you know, how many tomatoes you have and how tomatoey you want the dish, you can actually do it either way. And so basically that's going to stew for a while, and you can put some salt in. And traditionally this is served in Italy the way my grandmother used to make it, is peperonata with polenta, and then she would do some kind of like boiled meat on the side, like she'd boil a chicken or boil some beef, because the peperonata gives so much flavor to something like that that's boiled. But you know, here in California we love our grills, so you could grill a steak or some chicken, you could do some fish, be wonderful with this. At home I like to serve it with just polenta. It's just kind of a vegetarian dish. But there's so many things you can do with this. It's so versatile, and that's why I really like this, especially for the summer. A lot of people serve this either warm, or what they do is they cool it all the way down and they bring it with them on picnics. And that's a really nice thing to bring to the picnic. It's cold, but it's really, really delicious. So while I'm doing this, are there any questions you guys have? How'd you like the samples? Were they good? Good? Okay, good. So what you'll want to do with the basil is put your basil in the last 10 minutes of cooking. And this is actually just something that I do with any sauce that I'm making, because basils can get bitter if you cook it for a really long time. You smell that? Can you smell the basil that just came out of there? Wonderful. As you can tell, I really am driven by aroma. And you put your basil in the last 10 minutes. Don't put it in at the very beginning. You want to just put it in just for that perfume. Now another thing you can do in the samples that you just tasted, I did not make this agrodolce or sweet and sour, but this dish lends itself to that. So if you want to make this sweet and sour, at this stage, at the very end of cooking, what you'll want to do is either put in some wine or some vinegar. And when you do that, it's like the last 5 minutes of cooking, then you will turn this dish from more of a sweet to a sweet and a sour dish. I love all vinegars actually, and I think you could use, you could definitely use balsamic. I like a white balsamic with this just because it's a little bit lighter and this is a vegetarian dish. But you could use apple cider vinegar, that would be delicious, or any kind of red wine vinegar. It's really very versatile. Or if you take the wine after everybody's gone from your party and make your own vinegar, use that one too. In terms of wine recommendations, it really kind of depends if you're serving this with something else or not, but tomatoes are acidic, and so this is going to have a high acid in this dish. And what's important to remember about wine and food is that food affects wine much more than vice versa. And so something like an acid in a food can just destroy a wine. So you really have to think about, you know, what's in the dish that you're serving to complement the right wine. So with a high acid dish, you want a high acid wine because it will stand up to it, and the high acid of the food will reduce the taste of the high acid in the wine. And so, you know, you can also look at where is this dish from originally, and the wine pairings of that particular area will help guide you, because, you know, we've had a symbiotic relationship over time with wine and food, so that's always a good place to start. But I would do something like a Pinot Grigio from northern Italy, like from Friuli, or a Sauvignon Blanc or a Gavi would be delicious with this. If you wanted to do something heartier with a red, I would suggest something like a Sangiovese based wine, like a Chianti or a Barbera or a Dolcetto. Any of those would go really well with this and will stand up to the acid in the dish. Okay. I think I've showed you how to make peperonata, so do you have any questions, or are you going to go home and make it? Okay, good. And just to remind you, everything is on the website. There's a video and step-by-step guide of everything, so if you need it. And you can always email me too. I can answer questions for you.
We ran out of recipes at the end, so on the Farmers Market webpage, we'll also have a link to the Farmers Market Facebook page and webpage. We'll have a link to Sandra's website, and the recipe will be posted there as well. And Sandra, thank you so much for demonstrating peperonata to us. Thank you.
I'm glad I could introduce you to something that I love. You're welcome.